know what I noticed halfway through? I'm like, I am giving free advertisement to Noah and Terrence right now.
Noah. Oh, okay, yeah, I
If you want to
noticed it.
shop this sweater, go to shop Grace Co or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll put their link
Well,
down.
it is kind of hidden a little bit with your hair and your knee, but
It's okay. If you guys like this, I'll link it. Welcome back, everyone, to the On Water Podcast. I'm your host. I am Jin. We have a few changes today. I'm holding the mic today. That's one change. I don't know if it's gonna make it sound better or worse. If it sounds like garbage, let me know. But I'm doing this because I just felt like I usually have a music stand, and I just felt like it was in the way. I don't know. But also, I use my hands a lot when I talk. Like I was telling Jaymie that like I'm holding it today, but I move so much, and you can probably tell in my reels and in like the podcast videos, I move a lot. I'm a very animated speaker, and so hopefully I'm not like like just waving around the mic here and there, but I will try my best to be self controlled. Um, I just wanted to start off today by saying thank you to all of the people who have financially supported the podcast. It's so crazy because I think I mentioned the financial support button on our link tree. I mentioned that I think one of the first few episodes in season one. I mentioned it, and yeah, and there's just been, you know what, I'm gonna shout out these people who have supported us because I feel like they deserve to get a little shout out, you know what I mean? Alyssa Cortez is the first person who ever supported us, and I just want to thank you so much, Alyssa. From day one, you have been a On Water podcast supporter, and I thank you so much for that. We also have Christina and Natasha and Vincent and oh, I don't want to pronounce your name wrong. Angelique. It's also like angelic. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce your name, girl. But thank you so much for all the people who have been supporting us. Through prayer, but also financially, you guys are making a whole lot of a difference here because the as we kind of rack up donations and financial support, I'm really hoping that we can buy our own mics and have that permanently because I am running around, y'all. I'm running around like renting stuff and returning stuff, and it's a whole lot of moving around, and so hopefully we can do that and maybe even be able to rent a studio or all that good stuff, just to keep the podcast going. And honestly, I love our humble abode, the my house that we film in. But yeah, it's nice, but also like opportunities for change and doing different things would be really cool. But anyways, thank you so much for all the financial supporters. Thank you for all the people who are supporting us through prayer and just sharing the podcast. Sharing things on Instagram is free. Sharing things on TikTok is free. And you guys have been doing it like crazy, and I feel so encouraged. And even when you guys leave comments, I feel so encouraged. And so yeah, I'm just so thankful today. I want to start off with just thanksgiving to you guys and to the Lord because there's a lot of days when I'm like, I don't even know where this is going. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if what I'm saying is good, if how I'm saying it is good, but God does what he does, and he will, you know, he will lift up and he will favor and bless the things that he wants to. And I am so honored and so thankful to be the receiving end of his favor and his blessing. And so that's just what I wanted to share. And well, today's topic is not a very it's not a very sexy topic. It's not like a ooh, like I like it's not a lot of people like talking about this. Nobody really likes to think about this, and it's not a popular topic of conversation in a lot of Christian spaces, even though it is a critical part of who we are and what we do as Christ followers. Um, and I wanted to kind of bring it up to light today because it's something that I personally have been working on and I've been studying for years. Not because it is something that I'm passionate about. I should be, but I'm not passionate about it. But it's something that I suck at. And I feel like the more I learn about it and the more I invest in kind of learning what it is, the more I'll do it. And all this to say, today's topic of conversation is Sabbath and rest. I know it's not very woo, like this is something I really want to do. And I think it's honestly because we don't really know what it is and we don't talk about what it is. And if we don't actually get to know what Sabbath really is and what rest really means and why we have to do it, we never will, right? So, um, like I said, the reason why the reason why I want to talk about Sabbath and rest, you guys are forced to listen to it. I mean, like I want to talk about Sabbath and rest, simply because I really struggle with it. And I even noticed it well, this week, because I go kind of in this cycle. And I feel like a lot of people might agree with me. A lot of people might relate to this. Is I tend to overwork myself or overbook myself or do a lot of things over a span of like a week or 2 weeks. And I'm like, go, 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 go. No place for rest. Every morning, every evening, there's something to do. I fill my day with something. And then close to the end of that time period, I'm exhausted. I'm like, I don't haven't had like a good night's rest. I haven't, had a time to myself. I'm an introvert, so I need a time for myself to, get re-energized and things like that. I haven't had that in a long time. I don't know when the last time I just woke up without an alarm. Like, I don't know when I was really at peace and rested. And then I feel like, okay, yeah, I need to take a rest, and everyone else says so. And so I take like 1 or 2 days of just doing absolutely nothing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel lazy. I feel like I haven't done anything productive. And I'm also thinking about all the other stuff that needs to get done that I didn't do while I was taking those 1, 2 days of rest. And I feel anxious about it. And so I go into another whole phase of just booking, scheduling things, and making sure, like, okay, I need to get the stuff done. And then there's the beginning of the cycle again, right? Where I overwork myself, I get too tired and burnt out. I rest for a couple days. I feel guilty about it. I don't I don't feel like I'm being productive. I burden myself with the feeling that I'm lazy, and then I schedule and book myself like crazy when I don't have the capacity to do that. And then back to the whole cycle. And I feel like that's happened a lot uh over the past couple of years. I think honestly, it's so bad because I don't remember a time in my life when my life wasn't like that. It was constantly doing something, and I feel like it's built into our culture, but also it is a part of me. Like our culture is always like, you need to be doing something, producing, like grind life. Like you gotta be, working super hard and doing more and doing more. And if you're not doing anything, then you're kind of wasting away your time. And especially because we have so much access to stuff at our fingertips. If you're like, if you're not working, then like why aren't you like pursuing a side hustle or doing something more on like social media, or like there's so much more you can gain, and um, there's always a greed for more. And I think this kind of, I didn't even think about this, but I think it well connects into one of the points we made for the beginning of the season two is envy. Is like we feel greedy and envious of the many different things that we are attracted to in this world, and so we constantly are working to get more and more and more, and it's like a never, it's like a cup with a hole at the bottom where it's like constantly you need to fill it, you know what I mean? And so yeah, I feel like we don't know how to rest because of that. We don't know how to stop. I don't know how to stop. And genuinely, I don't know. I don't fully know how to. Oh, Ben, are you leaving? Come here for a second. Come here for a second. Can you come here for a second? So my sister is here, and come. Ben, we're talking about Sabbath and rest today. Can you give the people a little tidbit, a bin tidbit on how to rest and take your Sabbath?
Mm, Figure out what you like to do and ask Jesus.
All right.
Usually it's a mix of both.
Mix of both. Okay. Find out what you like to do and ask Jesus. Thanks for the tidbit, Ben. We'll incorporate that somewhere in the application portion, which I love. Bye, Ben. Okay. So, yeah. We got her to say something, y'all. Yeah, my sister's usually like sometimes she goes back and forth while we're filming, but I thought I would just get her on the podcast today, which is fun. But yeah, so we're talking about rest and actually doing that. So, uh, the one thing that God had put on my heart to talk about specifically about Sabbath and rest is why it's important. Because I never want to tell people like this is something that you have to do when it comes to your spiritual life and not actually explain why it's important. Because if we don't understand why, we will do it out of religiosity. We will not do it because we actually feel like we need it or because it's good. Or if we don't have the why, we will not actually put it into practice. It's just like when you talk to a kid and you're like, oh, like, don't touch the fire. It's like, well, if you just say that without explaining to me, I'm gonna want to do it more. and so it's like explaining why, do like avoiding this behavior or doing this behavior is important. Will encourage you guys to actually do it. So we will. So the topic. This is my. So when it comes to the see, I have such bad attention span. The topic of the podcast, well, the title of the podcast that I was actually thinking of was rest is a command, not a suggestion. Because we look at the Ten Commandments, and one of those commandments is make the Sabbath holy. And the Sabbath is a day of rest. And so if we are thinking of Sabbath as something that is a suggestion rather than a command, we'll always make it a lower of a priority than it should be. Right? And so let's keep that in the back of our heads. Sabbath is a command, not a suggestion. All right. Well, and this is why Sabbath and rest is such a important part of our lives, and why it needs to be an integral part of the way that we, how do I say, schedule, but also we choose to live in the cycle of life. The reason why it's so core to be a part for it to be a part of our lives. So it is because Sabbath and rest is also an integral part of how we were created to be. Just like how in Genesis 1, you see that God creates all these amazing things. He creates the whole universe. Whatever you see right now, wherever you are, He created it. And that's a lot of work. That is a lot of work for, you know, for Him. But He is great and He does it. And then on the seventh day, He rested. And God didn't rest because he is like weak and he needs the rest, right? It's not because like, oh, he's overexhausted and overburdened and he's like, oh my gosh, the past 6 days have been so much. I need rest. No, God rested because that is a part of who he is. To be able to look and look at all of the good things that he has created and say, wow, this is good. I want to sit and enjoy and be joyful and just love on the things that I have created. And setting that time apart just to do that, like that's God's heart for us. He's like, I want to set apart a time, a day where I can just love on my creation. I don't have to focus on if it's doing well or if I need to create more or any work. He's like, I just want to love on my creation. I want to love on the things that are good. And if we are created in God's image, I don't know about you, but I think if rest is a big part of who God is, it should be a big part of who we are, right? Because we are not superhuman. We cannot continually do stuff and work on stuff without having rest. It's just impossible. And if you want to use a analogy that's used in scripture a lot to describe us, it's like we are trees that bear fruit, right? And a lot of the times we want to be trees that bear fruit all the time. We're like, if we're not bearing fruit, then what are we doing? You know, we're trees, we got to be bearing fruit all the time. We want to be, producing. But if you look at nature and how trees work, there is a time of harvest, there is a time of abundance, there is a time of fruitfulness, and then there's a time of growth, and there's a time of barrenness, there is a time of winter. There's a time when nothing grows, not even leaves. There's a time when it's just the branches. And we have to understand that that is a part of how we get to the harvest and the producing and the fruitful seasons. It is not a punishment. If you don't see like, oh, I don't see all the fruits and all like the good things producing in my life, that's not a punishment. It's just the season you're in. And it's actually a part of the seasons that we go through in this life, right? And so and sometimes rest can feel like that barren season, right? Where it's like I'm resting and I'm just enjoying and I'm having fun and I'm enjoying the good things. Like I said, enjoying the good things, enjoying the things that God has created. Sometimes it can feel like, but I'm not producing anything. I'm not creating anything good. I'm not doing more. And that's okay. Because God created us to also need and desire rest and being able to see the ways that God has created all these things in our lives and love on it. You know, he wants us to love on the things that he has created, and also the world around us and the nature around us, you know. He wants us to. He created the heavens and the earth and like the birds and the trees and the mountains and the valleys. Wherever you're listening from, you have some kind of landscape outside that you can enjoy and he's created it so that you can love on it. You can look at it and be like, wow, God, I love your creation. And so take time to enjoy that. Go outside, touch some grass. Some of y'all need to touch some grass. I know y'all be looking at your computers at work all day, and you're, on Instagram and all that stuff, but some of y'all need to touch some grass, because it's been way too long. And so don't just consider the season of, or the times, the moments of just being still as times of like laziness or failure. Even, it's not. And I think having this mindset will actually make us more patient and gracious when things are not fruitful. Like, you won't blame God, you won't be annoyed if you're not producing or you're not flourishing in these different fruits. There is a time for everything. That's scripture. There is time for everything. And they give a lot of examples in that verse. I don't have it with me, but I know it's scripture. There is a time for everything. And so there is a time for flourishing. There is a time of fruitfulness. There is a time of working hard. And then there is a time of acknowledging your humanness. There's a time of acknowledging your weakness, and that you need to rest, and that you need to just be in the presence of God, and also love on the things that he has already given you, right? And also it gives you a moment of reflecting on thankfulness and thanksgiving for what God has put in your life already, instead of wanting more and more and more and more, like the envy that we just talked about. But yeah, and also why we need rest and Sabbath is because our bodies need it. One thing I have been learning a lot about is how we as human beings are so multifaceted, and that we are affected emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, sexually. What's the last one? Yes, physically, mentally, socially. I didn't say socially. The last one is socially. There's 6 in total, right? Yeah. So there's 6 in total. So we're influenced by the things around us in so many different ways. And you will see the lack of rest affected in all those areas. Truly. You will feel it physically, and I think that's like the first thing we actually pay attention to, is the physically part. I don't want to get up. I'm so sleepy. I'm so tired. Like your physical body is just weighing down, like when you feel a lack of rest, a lot of times that's what we first initially experience and are attentive to. And so that's why, like, when people say they're tired, it's mostly associated with physical, what do you call it? Physical consequences. Yeah, with physical consequences. But honestly, in my perspective, a lack of rest most likely and primarily will start spiritually. Because the moment that you start neglecting rest, true rest, not just let me just be a vegetable for a couple hours and watch TV, it's you're not fully at peace with the Lord, and you're not giving time with him. Like, that's the first thing we neglect, is when we don't want to rest, when we don't want to, because we're over focused on the things that we need to do in ourselves. And so we truly, our spiritual lives become neglected with that lack of rest. And I think the second place where we are affected by a lack of rest, before we even acknowledge it, is in our minds. And whenever we lack rest or lack peace, so I'm going to bring a little bit of psycho education into this. when our bodies are constantly go, 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 our bodies will naturally go into a fight or flight response. Because we either need to be fighting to fighting against whatever threat there is, or we're gonna flee from it and we're going to run away from it and we're gonna stop, right? And it heightens a level of anxiety within your body, is always feeling that there's something else to do, there's always somewhere else to go. And it if your body has no place to rest, if your mind has no place to rest, it will constantly be in that state. And it actually is a very big cause of anxiety and depressive disorders. And I was actually talking to a friend yesterday about this and about a lack of rest, because it's not just physical rest, it's mental rest too, y'all. Like I said, rest is not just being at home for a couple hours and watching TV all day and thinking that, oh yes, I'm rested now. I've turned off my brain. I've been a vegetable for the night, and so tomorrow I can go back to what I need to do and go back to how I've been living. That is not true rest. And I think when when our brains can't turn off, we either overcompensate by trying to relieve our anxiety by finish actually doing the things that we feel like need to be done. Like for example, me, like I said, my cycle is when I feel like things are not getting done and I get heightened anxiety because there's so many things to do. I plan on a schedule so that everything can be done. And it causes us to work more and be more overburdened. And we start to ruminate on all those things. How many times have you had restless nights because you're constantly thinking about what you have to do the next day? Or you're worried about something that happened yesterday, or you're worried about what will happen in the future, and you're constantly ruminating on what is good, what is bad, and what needs to be done, and what hasn't been done yet, and what might need to be done. Like the restlessness that is in your brain because of those things, it will cause a heightened anxiety in you. And most of the times when we have heightened, there's a reason why we say that anxiety and depression are sisters, because a lot of the times when we get overstimulated, the way that our bodies will choose to protect itself is by shutting down. And what does that kind of look like? That looks like depression to me, baby. It really does. And it looks like, hey, there's a lot going on right now, and so I'm going to do nothing. And that's a cycle too, where we overburden ourselves. We have heightened anxiety. We feel out of control. And so we shut down. And then that heightens more anxiety because we're not doing anything, because we don't feel like we can do anything. And then we become numb, become more anxious, and it's just on top of each other again and again and again. And these are cycles that we cannot live by if we want to actually live in freedom, right? I think it's important for us to understand when we feel overburdened by the responsibilities of the things that we put on ourselves. And this, okay, so I've been reading a book on rest, and I'm gonna actually mention later on 2 resources if you want to learn more about rest and Sabbath. And this was a quote in one of the books that I read. And this is what it is. Get ready for the fire, okay? So, rest is the acknowledgement that things will be lost, broken, and damaged in your absence, but we will still come out of it whole, loved, and valued, trusting that things will hold without our constant care and maintenance. That gave me, that quote gave me so much freedom, because I think that a lot of times I don't want to rest, or I don't want to fully submit my work, the podcast, my friendships, my ministry. I don't want to let those go and actually go into a time of rest or go take my Sabbaths or stuff like that, because I'm worried that in my absence, everything will fall apart. Like I won't have control over it. And if I don't have control over it, then everything's gonna go wrong. Or at least something's gonna go wrong and then I'm gonna have to fix it. And then it's gonna be another problem I'll have to deal with. And I blow myself up with all of this anxiety. And a lot of people, when I express that concern to them, they're like, oh, it's okay. Like, even if you leave it for a little bit, it'll be fine. You'll come back and it'll be okay. And even like, oh, like if you don't work on the podcast for a while, it's gonna be fine. But they don't know that. They don't. What if it does crash into the ground? What if I let go of a bunch of stuff? I let go of the things that I'm holding control over, and everything goes to crap. Then I'm gonna look at them and be like, "You dirty! You told me that this is gonna be fine, and you lied." You know, like it's true. Like this quote says, "It's true that in your absence, things can be broken, things can be damaged, and things can go wrong in your absence. Like your absence is an integral part of things going well, you know? Like we're not diminishing your presence in the things that you invest your time in. It's just saying that even if in your absence things get damaged and things go wrong, your identity, you will still come out of it lovable, still loved, still valued, and that doesn't change. Even if the things that you're investing your time in do, your identity and who you know you are does not change. And so take that Sabbath, take that time of rest. And yes, the things that you've invested your time in might go, I was going to say something bad, but I'm not going to say it. It might become damaged. It might go wrong. But at the end of it, you still come out of it more whole, more peaceful, and still loved, regardless of how that endeavor turned out. And so I hope that gives you a sense of peace and a sense of reassurance. Reassurance, is that a word? Reassurance. English is not my first language, but it's okay. Reassurance that God holds it all together. If you submit yourself, if you submit your endeavors to God, you will come out of it whole, not broken because you're trying to hold everything together, because He does. And no matter what happens to the things that you want to have control over, it's going to be okay. Take that rest. Take it. Now, I'm talking to you. Whoever this, I'm talking to, take it. Don't fight it. Take that rest because you need it. And another reason why Sabbath and rest is very important is because it sanctifies us. And I'll explain how does resting and enjoying and loving on God's creation, how does that sanctify us? And in the book that I'm reading again, there is a reference to Henry Nouwen, a very, very great theologian. Henry Nouwen, he said that rest is like a furnace of transformation. And in this furnace, the false self built upon social expectation is exposed. And I'll read that again. So rest is a furnace of transformation. And in this furnace, the false self built upon social expectation is exposed. And this is why. When we go into rest and in Sabbath, and we do it intentionally by being more connected with the Lord and resting with God, you're not resting on your own when you're taking your Sabbath, you're resting with God. It is not a solitary experience. It is something that you share with the Lord. And when we are faced with ourselves, and when we are faced with ourselves alone, without the things that usually cover our usually our endeavors, our jobs, our friendships, our relationships, the things around us actually cover us because we're focused on things that are on the exterior, not on the interior. And so when we take the time to just sit and to reflect, the only thing that we can do is reflect on the things that are happening on the inside. And a lot of times we want to avoid rest and Sabbath simply because we don't want to look. We don't want to sit with our thoughts. We don't want to sit with the things that are really within us. You know, we don't want to sit with that because sometimes, most of the time, it sucks. And most of the time, that is the source of our anxiety. And sometimes what propels us into doing more is because we don't want to face the reality of what's happening on the inside. And I think when we are sitting with the Lord and like, when's the last time you sat in silence and solitude? No music, no podcast, no sermon. Just you and God, just sitting and contemplating. It's really hard. But sometimes we just need to let our bodies just be still and be okay with just sitting with ourselves. And interestingly, this came to mind. I forgot which sermon it was, but it was a sermon from Mike Todd. It's in the relationship goals series, but he said basically, like, if you're like desperate to be in a relationship, or like you really want to be in a relationship, or like feel like you need to be in a relationship to be happy, it's because you don't like yourself. You can't even be alone with you. How do you expect somebody else to come into your life and want to be and love on you if you don't even like yourself? You don't even like sitting with yourself. If you can't sit alone and reflect on who you are and not feel contented, hard for anybody else to, truly, because you see yourself every day. And if you if you see yourself every day and you're like, dang, I don't like this, how do you expect somebody else to look at you and be like, yes, you know? I want some of that. No, absolutely not. And so it actually causes us to self-reflect, and the Sabbath and rest will force you to do that. And also, it exposes our obsession with ourselves. When we put rest at the end of our priority, it's because we are so overly focused with ourselves and what we want for our lives and what we want to do. And like I said, the envy and the greed that we have, and to feed ourselves, we have an over obsession with ourselves to the point where we cannot pay attention to anything else except for us. And because in our rest and in our Sabbath, the one thing that you naturally do when you rest is acknowledge the things around you, right? Like, usually when you go to rest, like, people want to, when we want to rest, people go on vacations to, like, you know, beaches and stuff like that. And it's because they're actually paying attention to what's around them, not what's happening to them or what they want to do, right? And even when we take our Sabbaths and then we enjoy time with friends, we enjoy time with our friends and with others, we're acknowledging the people around us, and we're taking the time to see what we are surrounded by, rather than our ambition and our desire for more, you know? And so the less you know what? The more we commit time to not focusing on ourselves, the more rest we'll actually achieve. It's like, no, I'm not spending this day to feed myself. I'm spending this day to acknowledge what's outside of me and to give it appreciation and to love on it, you know? Um, and I feel like that actually, it sanctifies us. It transforms us into people who are not, who actually, it centers us into what we actually need to be doing in this life, is to not defeat ourselves. It centers us back to our purpose, which I think we do need on a weekly basis, right? And so, if that's not enough reasons for you, God, in the name of Jesus, please open their eyes to see that their rest and Sabbath is important. And the thing is, it says in the commandment, it says, keep the Sabbath holy. And what holy means is for it to be set apart, right? And so if we're trying to maintain our Sabbath, it can't be looking like every other single day of the week. It needs to be set apart. It needs to be different. It needs to look different. It needs to feel different. It needs to add something different into your week that will actually let the other days of the week be doable. You know? And so if you're like, yeah, I take my Sabbath, but if you're treating the Sabbath like a checklist, like the Old Testament Sabbath, like you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you're treating the Sabbath day that you're taking as a checklist, and every other single day of the week you're just checking off things off your list of the things you need to do, that's not a Sabbath. Because then you're just like, okay, I've done it. No. Our Sabbath is supposed to be a time of something that we need to do because we understand that we need it, and understand that this is not just something that I feel like I have to do because I need to check it off my week. And that just becomes another religious practice. It has to be, God, I want to be in rest with you, and I want to sit with you and just enjoy life with you and just be a person, not what I do or what I produce. A tree doesn't stop being a tree because it stops producing fruit. The tree is still a tree, right? It's just in a different season. It's in a different time. And so I want to encourage you guys to look at the Sabbath within your week. Pick one day and I'm going to go into, before we end, I want to go into what a Sabbath could look like, right? Because trust me, a Sabbath does not look the same for everyone. It looks very different depending on what stage of life you're in. I'll explain how my Sabbaths look like. I will be very honest. I have not taken a Sabbath day in a long time. And I am very honest about that. It's not good. But this is why I tell y'all all this stuff, so that I don't go on being a hypocrite, right? But this is how I kind of take my Sabbath. I usually make it intentional the night before to pray and be like, God, as I rest tonight and as I go to sleep, God, would you just allow me to rest as much as you need me to in my sleep? Because how many days within this past month have you woken up without the sound of an alarm? When have you just let your body rest as much as it needs to? Not punishing yourself for sleeping if you sleep more than 12 hours without an alarm, maybe your body needs it. Stop making it a punishment if you sleep for a long time. It's not a punishment for you to need to sleep. And usually your body, once it's like, okay, it's time to get up, it will get up. So I pray the night before, God, just allow me to rest as deeply and as solidly as you need me to throughout the night, and with your Holy Spirit, just wake me up in the morning. And so I don't set an alarm, and I just wake up when the Holy Spirit leads me to. When my body feels rested enough, that's when I wake up. And then I wake up and I'm just like, God, what do you want to do today? I don't know. What do you want to do today? What feels good to you? You know? And sometimes it's going to a coffee shop. Sometimes it's taking a walk. Sometimes it's let's just laze around the bed a little bit more. Like, and allowing the day to be a day where you can just enjoy life with God. Like the last time I did my Sabbath, I just went on a drive. I'm like, God, let's go on a drive. And so we went on a drive, and I was able to drive like a 30-40 minutes up north, and just sit with God, listen to worship music, and like I said, acknowledge the things around you. I paid attention to the weather and the people who are walking and all the different stores that changed. I'm like, oh my gosh, this place is gone now. Oh God, they opened this, and acknowledging the things around you. And then after I got like 30-40 minutes up north, I noticed this like little coffee shop that was at the corner of a street, and I was like, God, you want to go in? Okay, let's go in. And I went inside. I parked, and I've never been to that cafe before, but I parked and I went inside, and I was like, God, like I just want to learn more through your scripture today. So like, where should I read? And then like I heard from God to read a certain chapter, a certain verse, and so I studied it. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I kept reading more, and I'm like, and I didn't allow it to be like, okay, so you know what, I'll just read that one chapter. It's like I'm just gonna read it, and like, oh my gosh, like this is cool too, and then I would keep reading or flip back to where it references to, and never put a time limit, because I'm like, why would I put a time limit on to enjoy something, you know? And so I kept going, and then sooner or later it was like 4 or 5 o'clock, and I was like, dang, and I was like, well, God, I really want to see the sunset with you. And so I drove to a park with this really big hill, and I just sat there, didn't even put on music. I didn't have my headphones. I just sat there on the hill, and and it was even before the sun went down. I was just sitting and contemplating and seeing like the people bring their dogs out, and play with their kids, and like couples walking, and I was like, God, like, look at all these people you created. That's really cool. And then I would see the sun go down, and there would be a sunset, and then like I see like the twinkle of the apartments and everyone in their homes, and I'm like, God, like each person in with like each little light has a person who you've created and who you've given purpose, and that's really cool. Nothing more. It's just like that's really cool that like each person out here, as I look into the world, like you've given life to, and that's the God I serve. And that's really cool, and just acknowledging him. And so your Sabbath can look like anything. It really can. It's just being able to have the chance to not just look at the ways things need to be changed or things need to be fixed, but just loving on what already is, and like I said, you need the Sabbath, you need the rest. And a lot of people are like, you deserve rest, you deserve it, you need it. I think more than using the word deserve, I think I would use I don't know if I would use the word, but I would be like, that's a good one. You require rest. That's good. Thanks, Jaymie. My brain was not functioning for a second. But yeah, you require rest. And I know that it can be very difficult, because I know that a lot of people have kids. They have very demanding jobs, and they have so many things going on in their life. But like I said, things may be damaged and things may be broken because of your absence while you take rest. And that's okay. And that's okay. You are still loved. You are still worthy. You are still valued. And you will actually come out better and whole because of your rest. Everything around you, you cannot break yourself for the sake of the things around you. And you have to be okay for the things around you to be broken for the sake of yourself. For the sake of you to be whole, for the sake of you to feel like you can keep doing the things that God has set you out to do, is to be willing for the things around you to be broken. And allowing God to be the person who holds that. And acknowledging that He holds it together, right? And so before we end, I want to give you 2 resources. All of the quotes that I mentioned today. Oh, whoops. Wait. I keep plugging this out. All of the quotes today that I mentioned are from this book by Alabaster Co. It's called Towards Rest. I got this as a gift, and it has been a big blessing to my life. It's Towards Rest, Discovering the Qualities of Rest for Our Lives of Faith. Alabaster Co., if you ever want to work with us, I love y'all. Y'all are great. And so if hit me up. But this is a really great book. I plan on finishing this book and actually passing it on to other people, because it's just amazing, and I can't say anything bad about it. That's what I was gonna say. The other one is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. John Mark Comer is one of my favorite pastors, writers. He is just so eloquently spoken, but also very integrative in his work. Like, he includes history, science, sociology, psychology, theology, everything into his work. And this book almost saved my life, y'all. Like, truly. Like, I think one of the things that one of the quotes that he mentions in here, it's a very commonly like known quote, where it's if the enemy can't break you, he'll make you busy, or something like that. Like, if the enemy can't stop you, he will make you busy, right? To keep you distracted from being with the Lord and being in intimate relationship with God. And it says, how to stay emotionally healthy and spiritually alive in the chaos of a modern world. This book is so good, y'all. This book is so good. I would highly, highly recommend it. And so those are the 2 resources that I will give you. And I really hope that like I said in the beginning, this is not a very sexy topic. Not a lot of people are going to be listening to like podcasts and sermons about Sabbath all the time. It's just not, but it's such an integral part of who we are. And I think as much as I am passionately encouraging you guys to rest and keep a Sabbath, I'm also pointing it at myself. And there is no excuse to not take a Sabbath or rest. Whether you're a student, a full-time student plus full-time worker plus, like, I don't know, mom of 2 plus da 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 da. There is no excuse to not take a Sabbath. And I know that sounds crazy, but listen to the podcast from the beginning again. There's many reasons why I'm saying that there is no excuse. Because it is an integral part of who you are and how you've been created. And you have to understand that as a part of how you've been created by God is to rest and take a Sabbath. And so if you're like, oh, I don't need to take a Sabbath, or I'm not going to take it, that means you are trying to go against how and why you were created. I don't think you want to do that. And as much as it is hard, there is grace. And so even if you need to take a Sabbath evening, set it apart. Like I said, Sabbath and holiness are very much intertwined. It is a descriptor of the Sabbath is holiness. And so set it apart. Put it in your calendar. Make it intentional to set apart a time for the Sabbath, for enjoying and loving on the things that God has created and who God is in general, right? Love on God, love on your kids, love on your spouse, love on your family, love on your animal, love on the earth, love on people that walk across the street. Like, just show them the love and appreciation and thanksgiving that they deserve. And it deserves whatever it is that God calls you to contemplate and love on that day. And it'll make your life so much more peaceful and enjoyable and joyful. And I think we all need to take that as a priority in our lives. And so hopefully that was both informative and encouraging to you. All the people who are stressed out and tired. It's okay to take that rest. And I keep saying it because I need to hear it. It's okay to take that rest. Things might change, things might go wrong, but God still holds that. The world doesn't end. Some things might go wrong, but the world doesn't end, and you come out more whole. And so, yeah, if you guys have any more questions or you guys have any more thoughts that you want to hear about Sabbath and rest, put them in the poll or whatever I do for Spotify podcast. Put them in the comments on YouTube. DM me on Instagram. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for listening. You guys are great. Audience is just as good as the speaker. And I want to thank you, Jaymie, for being here. And I think that's it. And so, yeah. All right. Okay, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Farewell. Goodbye. Bye.